Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's program, Finishing the Work in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Ending Genocide Denial and the Glorification of War Criminals. My name is Vehida Spiodic, and I am the Director of Community Relations at Congress of Bosniaks of North America. I have an honor to open today's program. As most of our viewers are aware, tomorrow is March 1st, which marks the 29th anniversary of independence of Bosnia and Herzegovina. On behalf of the Congress of Bosniaks of North America, I wish a happy Independence Day to all citizens of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Please allow me to send my regards to His Excellency, Ambassador Dr. Valentin Inzko, the High Representative for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Your Excellency, we know that it is late afternoon your time on a Sunday, so we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. This is greatly appreciated by all of us from North America. The Congress of Bosniaks of North America is a proud host of today's program and would like to welcome the members of the Working Group for Bosnia and Herzegovina, our co-sponsor today. Dr. David Pettigrew will open the program and will deliver introductory remarks. Following his address, I will invite Djenita Pasic to moderate the program with His Excellency, Ambassador Dr. Inzko. Without further ado, please allow me to introduce Dr. Pettigrew. David Pettigrew is a professor of philosophy at Southern Connecticut State University in New Haven, Connecticut, where he also teaches a course on Holocaust and genocide studies. Dr. Pettigrew serves as a member of the steering committee of the Yale University Genocide Studies program. Professor Pettigrew lectures and writes about the genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina in order to resist human rights violations in Republika Srpska, to advocate for laws against genocide denial and against the glorification of war criminals, and to ensure that the victims will not be forgotten. His most recent essay, presented for Krug 99, was published on December 13th, 2020, titled Suočavanje s tragičnim nasljeđem Dejtonskog sporazuma 1995. do 2020. godina, confronting the tragic legacy of the Dayton Accords, 1995 to 2000. Versions of the essay were also incorporated into a report for Bundestag and as an op-ed for Al Jazeera Balkans. Professor Pettigrew, welcome, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Vehida, for your kind introduction. Thanks to our co-sponsors, Congress of North American Bosniaks Golden Lily Academy and Working Group for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thanks to everyone working behind the scenes to make our program possible. Murat Muratovic, Akif Kogo, Vehida Spiodic, Djenita Pasic, and of course to Patrick McCarthy for all his careful attention to the detailed arrangements. Today we are honored to welcome Ambassador Valentin Inzko, who has been High Representative to Bosnia since March 2009. It's difficult to summarize such a distinguished diplomatic career, so I'll limit myself to his connection to Bosnia and the region. Indeed, from 1996 to 1999, just after the international aggression and genocide, Dr. Inzko served as first resident Austrian ambassador to Bosnia, then based in Vienna. From 1999 to 2005, Ambassador Inzko headed the Austrian Foreign Ministry department responsible for Central Asian and Southeastern Europe, as well as Central Asia and the Southern Caucasus. He has had postings as well to Belgrade and Sanjak. As you know, the position of High Representative was created under the General Framework for Peace in Bosnia and Herzegovina that was negotiated in Dayton, Ohio, and signed in Paris, December 1995. In this capacity, High Representative Inzko has been addressing challenges to the peace over the course of the past decade and itemizing these challenges or threats in his biannual reports to the Security Council, which I highly recommend to you for their detailed analyses of the situation. The reports carefully document the destabilizing rhetoric and actions of Republika Srpska, including attacks on Bosnia's national sovereignty, denial of the genocide, and delegitimization of the national courts. And his reports condemn hate speech and provocations. Of course, Ambassador Inzko has documented these details for history and for the world, and he has brought them to the attention of the UN Security Council. Thanks finally to Ambassador Inzko for advocating for the removal of the plaque for Karadzic on the dormitory in Pala, and for advocating for a law against genocide denial. Of course, our focus today is this abiding question about the prospects for ending genocide denial and the glorification of war criminals in Republika Srpska. We wonder whether the text of the proposed amendment to the criminal code that was proposed 1 year ago in the House of Peoples can be used as a model for the implementation of the law now. The proposed amendment was structurally similar to such laws in the European Union against Holocaust and genocide denial, such as in Austria, Belgium, and Germany, which conceive of the denial of genocide as an act of hatred and discrimination, since it minimizes or justifies the barbaric crimes suffered by the targeted group, minimizing not only the crimes, but also the suffering. And in this way, denial entails a threat that the crime could be repeated. The denial identifies the group as unworthy of empathy or protection against harm and renders the group vulnerable to a repetition of the harm. Denial re-traumatizes the survivors who deserve to be protected against such hate speech. Hence, denial is an impediment to the restorative justice that would be at the core of the possibility of reconciliation and state building. Such a law, then, is a matter of the greatest priority in a post-genocidal society. So we look forward today with great anticipation to Ambassador Inzko's reflections on these issues, and thank him again for joining us today. And now I turn it back to Vehida and Djenita.
Thank you for your remarks, Dr. Pettigrew. And now I would like to introduce Djenita Pasic, who will moderate today's program. Djenita Pasic is an attorney, educator, and activist residing in Louisville, Kentucky, where she has lived for over 30 years. Djenita is originally from Sarajevo and continues to be engaged in her homeland's fight for human rights, democracy, and equality. In addition to her law practice, Djenita serves with a number of US-based not-for-profit organizations for the benefit of her local community, as well as her American and Bosnian communities at large. Djenita, welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Djenita will take it from here.
Thank you, Vehida, and good afternoon to Ambassador Inzko and to all of you. I just first would like to tell you about the format of the panel today. Ambassador Inzko will speak for about 30 minutes and give his remarks about recent activities on genocide denial, after which we will have time for questions and answers from Mr. Inzko and the questions from all of you. For those of you on Zoom, you can feel free to submit your questions through the program using the questions and answers button at the bottom of your screen. And for our viewers on Facebook and YouTube, you may also submit your questions at any time. We will do our best to get all of your questions through to Ambassador Inzko. So it is now my honor and pleasure to turn the floor over to Ambassador Inzko.
Thank you very much, everybody, Vehida, Djenita, and also Professor David Pettigrew. I'm indeed pleased to have this dialogue with you, this conversation, as you called it, and particularly since quite a few events took place in recent months in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also in the United States. Yeah. Some of these events have a prehistory, like everything, but I don't want to go too far back. Yeah, all these issues have a political or historic background, so I will have to revisit briefly some of these events and issues. Yeah, just to remind you that almost a year ago, on 6th of May, I have addressed the Security Council of United Nations and I requested Mr. Dodik to remove this memorial plaque for Radovan Karadzic. Yeah. Some people, I'm mentioning the 6th of May of last year because some of the people tell me that I only woke up in November, December last year, why I didn't do it earlier. Of course, I always criticized the genocide denial, and I'm on record also that I did so 4 years ago when Karadzic and Plavšić and Krajišnik were decorated. But we will speak later about it. So on the 6th of May last year, I requested Mr. Dodik to remove the memorial plaque for Radovan Karadzic at the student hostel in Pale. I did it again on 11th of July in Srebrenica during the event last year, during the anniversary. And I did it once more on the 5th of November, again in the Security Council. But this time I gave Dodik a deadline. I said before the next Security Council, which will take place now in May, before the next Security Council meeting, he must remove this memorial plaque for Radovan Karadzic in Pale. I mean, it is bad enough really that young students, the future generation, the elite, if you like, the elite is living in a student dormitory, which is called after a convicted war criminal. So this was one thing. Another thing which I have to like to recall is that Heiko Maas, the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Germany, he spoke to young people in a conference on the 28th of October last year. And I would say this was a landmark speech. This was really a historic speech because Heiko Maas introduced an additional filter, an additional criterion for membership in European Union. And this additional condition is very interesting and for you very important and natural in a way. He said that not a single country can join European Union where there is a glorification of war criminals, which means we have the 35 chapters for joining European Union. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, we have the 14 points of priority, but we have now an additional point, which was introduced by the Foreign Minister of Germany, Heiko Maas, that the countries must not glorify war criminals, and of course also individuals. This was on the 28th of October last year and is still in force. Of course, we had also this 25th anniversary of Dayton. It is on our website, and President Clinton spoke, Prime Minister of Spain, Pedro Sanchez, who worked in the office of the High Representative, who worked in our office. Pedro Sanchez worked when we had the Spanish High Representative, Carlos Westendorp. So he knows quite well what is the OHR, and he gave also a speech. And in this 25th anniversary, Heiko Maas again repeated that there is no place for countries which are glorifying war criminals. Yeah. Just by the way, there's also John Erath. Remember the name? John Erath in the National Security Council. He also worked in the OHR. John Erath. Yeah. So we have this new sort of condition, new policy that no country can join European Union if it is glorifying war criminals. In the meantime, also, there were elections in the United States, and I must really say that we are very pleased, not only me personally, but also Chancellor Merkel and many others are pleased that we have now Joseph Biden in place. As far as Bosnia and Herzegovina is concerned, it is, of course, quite significant that he met Tito. Not meeting Tito is so significant, but that he knows Yugoslavia. He also went to the funeral of a famous communist, famous, well-known communist, I would say. Kardel, you know that Ploče was renamed. It was Kardeljevo, the port of Ploče. So Joseph Biden went to the funeral of Kardel. He came to Bosnia and Herzegovina together with President Clinton in '99 for the Stability Pact, the establishment of Stability Pact. And he came back again in 2009, 10 years later, when he came as a vice president of the United States. Yeah. So, however, during the war in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Joseph Biden had fiery speeches and very emotional. In an emotional way, he addressed the Senate. Yeah, he spoke out against the weapons embargo. He was supporting Bosnia and Herzegovina, and if I'm not wrong, I hope I'm right. Yeah, the speeches were written and edited by one Mr. Antony Blinken. Mr. Antony Blinken. Yeah, and apparently Mr. Blinken was socialized, and he learned word politics on the example of Bosnia and Herzegovina, writing speeches for Joseph Biden. This Antony Blinken has a very interesting personal history, but especially as far as his stepfather is concerned. His stepfather, Mr. Pisar, Samuel Pisar, was the only survivor of a Polish school of 900 children. He was the only survivor of this school, and he was apparently of very strong physical nature, because he was put into concentration camps of Majdanek, Auschwitz, Blizin, Sachsenhausen, Oranienburg, and ultimately Dachau. And there was a death march, if you like, yeah, at the end of the war. He escaped this death march, and he, through a miracle, I would say, he survived. So Mr. Blinken has a stepfather. He only died about 5 years ago. Mr. Blinken has a stepfather who survived Holocaust, who knows what Holocaust is. So Mr. Blinken, for him, it's very easy to switch from Holocaust to genocide. We also had, in the meantime, the nomination of Bill Burns for the CIA director. I met him 3 times. He visited Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I have great hopes that Bill Burns will also have some positive influence as far as Bosnia and Herzegovina is concerned. And the team of Joseph Biden, which will deal with the Balkan, eventually a special representative, I don't know. And of course, we have Samantha Power. She is in charge of US aid, but she is sitting as head of US aid. She is also sitting in the National Security Council, I was told. As you know, Samantha Power wrote a book about Holocaust, genocide, and it has about 1,000 pages. Of course, genocide in Armenia, genocide in Cambodia, but also genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina. She was US ambassador to United Nations. So we have now these 3 people, yeah. Blinken, we have Samantha Power, we have Bill Burns, yeah. But what we don't have yet, as far as I'm concerned, as far as my information is concerned, we don't have yet a new Biden team for the Balkans. And we must be realistic. We must be realistic. Bosnia and Herzegovina is not on the priority list of the Biden administration. Of course, it's amongst the 10, 15, or 20 issues which Biden likes to address, but we know, you know it much better. You have now the health issue. You have more than 500,000 people who died on Corona. You have this economy issue to kickstart economy. You have Afghanistan, you have Iran issue, you have, I don't know, Venezuela, etc., Cuba, but Bosnia will be maybe number 20, but we have a president who takes care of Bosnia and Herzegovina. And ultimately, the United States have been a midwife, so to say, to Bosnia and Herzegovina. When Europeans failed, yeah, my Europeans failed to stop war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Coming back to BIH, certain events took place here, which are quite of some significance, of symbolic value, like municipal elections in November in Bosnia and Herzegovina, then repeated municipal elections in Srebrenica and in Doboj, because there was, especially in Doboj, huge fraud. Tens of thousands of votes have been stolen in November. Now, candidates who got, say, 25,000 votes, the same candidates got now 7,000 votes. So from 25,000 to 7,000, you can imagine what went on in November. Yeah. We had also elections in Mostar after 12 years. And so we had in Mostar 16 years the same mayor, but we didn't have elections for 12 years. This mayor was of such a fragile health at the end that only 4 days after the new mayor was elected, only 4 days later, he got a heart transplant in Zagreb, and he now appears to be well, Mr. Beslic, yeah? And we have a new mayor, a doctor. He is a Croat. Also, the Bosniak candidate was also a doctor, and the main Serb candidate was a doctor also, and they understand each other very well. But the big sensation happened in Banja Luka, as you know, where, by the way, the mayor of Zagreb died yesterday or tonight, as you know, Milan Bandic. This is also of some, has some, how to say, relation to Bosnia and Herzegovina because he was from Herzegovina. Milan Bandic, like many successful people in Croatia, was from Herzegovina, yeah. Okay, the big change was in Banja Luka. It was in Bijeljina. Dodik lost the position of mayor. His party lost the position of mayor in Banja Luka. And there was a candidate who was 27 years old, yeah. And he kicked out the party of Dodik. He has, however, one stain, as you know, Mr. Stanivukovic, the new mayor of Banja Luka. He said in one of his first interviews that no genocide took place in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Only men were killed, only men, but not women, not children, only men. So there was no Holocaust. This was one of his first statements. The same is the case with the mayor of Srebrenica, Grujičić. He won 5 years ago, and he also said frequently that there was no genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina because no high-level authority has said so. Of course, the ICTY, the International Tribunal for Former Yugoslavia, said so that there was genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but Mr. Grujičić apparently thinks that the Security Council has to say so. But in the Security Council, we have China, we have Russia, etc. The Security Council did not pronounce itself on this issue, but the International War Crimes Tribunal is, how to say, a child of the Security Council. The Security Council created the International War Crimes Tribunal. So if the War Crimes Tribunal says there was genocide, it is as if the Security Council has spoken. In the meantime, in a few weeks ago, I also wrote a letter to the president of the Republika Srpska National Assembly, Mr. Čubrilović, and I told him to strip off medals from certain war criminals who are convicted war criminals, yeah, and who have legally binding convictions, yeah. Of course, decorations were given to many people. Decorations have been received by quite a few, but legally binding war criminals and judgments have only Karadzic, Krajišnik, and Madame Plavšić. So I wrote a letter to Čubrilović, to the president of the National Assembly, to strip off these medals, to take these medals away. And there was a huge, there was furious reactions. People said that I'm a Nazi myself, that Waldheim was a Nazi, and so on. I mean, unrelated issues came up, or that Austria gave an ultimatum to Serbia, which is true, which was a mistake in 1914, and that the First World War started due to the ultimatum. Dodik compared the ultimatum of Austria in 1914 with my deadline, which I gave to the Parliament of Republika Srpska, that they should give, strip off the medals from these individuals by end of April. This was not an ultimatum, it was just a deadline. And the deadline was, of course, necessary because I'm speaking to the Security Council again in May of this year. So after these furious reactions, we will see whether they will do it or not. But this is all in order to prepare myself for the law on genocide denial, which I'm sending maybe next week to the Parliament. It is ready. We have it now finalized. We will send it to the Parliament of Bosnia and Herzegovina And this will be my draft. There were several drafts before, but this is my draft. And I would hope that there would be an adoption of this law on genocide denial in the parliament. Of course, if there would not be an adoption, then I can take more steps on this issue. In the meantime, I also gave an interview to Oslo Bojanje, and I was quite clear that genocide denial is totally unacceptable for everybody. And then the journalist asked, is it also applicable to Mr. Stani Vukovic, the new mayor of Banja Luka? I said, of course, it is also applicable not only to Mr. Stani Vukovic, the mayor, but to all his advisors. Because I think there are some bad advisors behind this young guy. He is 27, as I said, and but he has maybe very senior advisors who are telling him to be nationalistic, to be more, I don't know how you call it in English, to be more populist than the Pope. Yeah. In any case, I warned him that he should not repeat that there was no genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I don't know whether this was my interview, but since this interview, Mr. Stani Vukovic and many others have never repeated anymore that there was no genocide in Srebrenica and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Somehow they respect my opinion, and I didn't say so, you know, that there was no, that this genocide denial is unacceptable. I like to introduce a process, you know, a catharsis, a rethinking of the Serb people. And it would liberate the Serb people more than the Bosniaks if Serbs would get rid of this burden of collective glorification of war criminals. I'm not speaking about collective guilt. There's no collective guilt, yeah. Maybe there's also no collective innocence. It's quite an interesting idea. There is no collective innocence, yeah. But I speak about the collective glorification. And why collective glorification of war criminals? Because it was done in the National Assembly on behalf of the nation. It was supported by all parliamentary clubs, and it was adopted unanimously. And all these decorations to Krajišnik, Karadzic, and Plavšić were handed over in the National Assembly on behalf of the people. So. Some people are also asking me why I reacted so late, because these decorations were given already 4 years ago. Yeah, this is true. But 4 years ago, Radovan Karadzic did not have yet, how you call it, a legally binding conviction. It was only first instance conviction, but it was not second instance conviction. And this second instance conviction, this final binding conviction, was only done in 2019. And I wrote my letter to Čebrilović these days because I can only request the removal of these decorations for if people have been legally binding convicted. In the area of movies, it was also very interesting that 2 movies touched the genocide issue in a direct way or indirect way. There was this one movie made in Serbia. It's called Dara of Jasenovac. This is a story of a small girl, 10 years old, who has a brother who is 2 years old. And this Dara of Jasenovac tries to survive this death camp of Jasenovac with his brother. She, of course, has to watch all these atrocities, shootings, and all what these people of NDH, NDH, you know, this brutal regime of the Croats in the Second World War has done. And this movie is quite explicit. It is, some say it's even sadistic, etc. But in any case, this movie was produced recently, actually presented recently, and created a lot of reactions. There were thousands of emails, etc. Of course, some were praising, others were critical. Some said it was primitive, it is full of sadism, it is too explicit, etc. In any case, what is very remarkable, there was also a second movie in this time. Of course, the first one, it's about sort of genocide in Croatia, in Jasenovac, where Serbs were killed systematically, Jews were killed, and Roma were also killed. The other movie is about Srebrenica, Quo Vadis, Aida, and this movie is about a translator, an English teacher, Aida in Srebrenica, who tries to survive this Holocaust, this genocide in Srebrenica, trying also to rescue the husband, you know, but she has no success. You see all these young boys from the Netherlands, etc. But what is interesting, Dara of Jasenovac, the third movie, was, how to say, eliminated from the selection of best foreign movie for an Oscar. It was eliminated. It did not cross this threshold, this filter. However, Quo Vadis Aida is admitted to be one of the competitors for best foreign movie to get an Oscar. But now what is very remarkable, the screenplay of the Jasenovac movie, Natasha Drakulic, she said, I keep the fingers crossed and I'm supporting that Aida, that Quo Vadis Aida would get an Oscar, it's quite remarkable. A screenplay from Serbia, wishing all the best, yeah. So the draft law on genocide denial will be in parliamentary procedure. I think truth is most important for reconciliation. And maybe we can later speak about a possible successor candidate, Mr. Christian Schmidt, for the High Representative post, who has quite a remarkable career. But I would like to stop now to leave more room for a debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Inzko. This was a great overview of the policies and of the recent events in Bosnia and Herzegovina and the region. In the meantime, we have had a couple of questions from the audience that I would like to read to you at this point. The first question is that the Bosnian parliament has previously considered legislation on criminalizing genocide denial, which narrowly failed to pass. What support would you need to impose such law as High Representative, and what are the barriers to your taking this action?
Will you read out all questions or later? I can reply one by one, yeah.
Well, the other one, the other question.
Let's take three, yeah.
Okay. There are Serbs and Croats in Bosnia who feel tainted by association with the war crimes committed by members of their communities, but who also feel intimidated to speak up in support of criminalizing genocide denial and sanction against the glorification of war criminals. Do you see action on these issues by your office as alleviating that burden and helping to improve the social and political atmosphere in Bosnia and Herzegovina? And then the third question is, do you think genocide denial is the result of ineffective punishment of the genocide perpetrators? Do not these criminals create an environment of fear where genocide denial is encouraged?
Absolutely. If I start with the third question, there is an atmosphere of fear. Many of the criminals still live. And maybe you remember that about maybe 1 month ago, 2 months ago, one of the war criminals was killed in Mostar. There were two gangs or two, two groups of or two perpetrators, and one killed another. And you wouldn't believe it, how many people went to the funeral, how many people expressed regrets that this war criminal lived. Also in Srebrenica, they're walking around, you know. And this is why I earlier spoke about collective guilt and collective innocence. I think there is no collective innocence. Too many people have participated or passively participated or watched the crimes, you know. So you cannot say now we have Adolf Hitler or somebody else in Austria who has been convicted, but all Austrians are innocent. The collective innocence also doesn't exist, yeah. I think maybe punishment is a strong word, but I think legislation is necessary. Yeah? There's also in the European Parliament, there was this resolution that every country has to look into this, to have a Holocaust legislation and genocide legislation. And punishment would help maybe that people would be more careful. Yeah, but most important would be a process, you know, a catharsis. Like the Germans, it took long. Even these days, there's a secretary of a concentration camp, maybe from Auschwitz. I think she is in a court because she participated, and she will get some punishment. But punishment is not the most important thing. In this case, she is 94, I think. Yeah, it's important that the Jewish witnesses have said it's important that we learn about the truth, what happened in this concentration camp. Yeah. About Serbs and Croats, I think they are intimidated. Absolutely, they are under pressure. And if you remember, Mr. Jovic, the leader of HDZ, he participated in a mass of gratitude. I'm a Catholic, but I was really shocked when Jovic and others participated in a mass of gratitude when war criminal Kordic came back from prison. Yeah. And Kordic, it's a strange story. He claims he has seen Jesus in the prison. He's studying now theology. Yeah? But whatever, you cannot welcome back with a religious service, with a mass of gratitude for a war criminal, or to organize a concert of support for war criminals. And there's also an organization called Triplet. Triplet, they have also lit candles when Praljak died. You remember Praljak, the guy who killed himself? There was the 3rd anniversary, and they have lit candles for him. So I told this Triplet, don't do it anymore, yeah, because you will have a problem. And now they are not doing it anymore. I don't know. I don't think it's only me, but people are now more careful to go public with such support for war criminals. But ultimately, if they would distance themselves from the individual war criminals, this would liberate the Serbs and the Croats and everybody. If there was a war criminal, you must simply admit and move forward, you know. Yeah. Parliament, yeah, legislation. I know that it failed, I think, once or twice. I like to give them another chance to do it in the parliament because they would maybe use an excuse, yeah, we didn't have a chance. And I will also give a good explanation why it is important to have a genocide denial law, like we have this Holocaust denial law in Austria. And it's not to blame any nation. There are no bad nations, but you need to have such laws. Thank you.
So we have some more questions here. Even if the Bosnian parliament passes a motion to adopt a law on genocide denial, given the country's political structure, how it can guarantee enforcement within Republika Srpska?
This is difficult. This is a very difficult question. And just these days, I don't want to escape this question. Yeah? These days we have 2 issues. One is that a district judge has said that state property belongs to Republika Srpska. We know that state property belongs to the state. I mean, it's obvious, yeah. I don't need to explain it. And we have the second one not in the federation, but at state level. The Constitutional Court has 7 years ago decided that the Academy of Science of Bosnia and Herzegovina has to be registered as a state institution, and that there is continuity of the Academy of Science of Socialist Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina and Republic of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and today Bosnia and Herzegovina, that there is continuity, like the state, yeah, has continuity. And you wouldn't believe it, the Minister of Justice, who is in charge of justice, is rejecting to register the Academy of Science as a state institution, Mr. Grubescher from HDZ. It's really unbelievable. So this enforcement is a very tricky issue. It's a difficult issue, but even if you don't enforce it, like in the case of state property, it means that the decision of the district court is not legal. It has no legal basis if this judge is ignoring the state court, the Constitutional Court, which has we will have still some problem in the future, but I am a little bit optimistic that this new High Judicial and Prosecutorial Council will work on the rule of law. This is the most important task for everybody in Bosnia and Herzegovina, rule of law and its enforcement.
Right. Then there is another question asking, many of the young Serbian generations are still showing much hate towards Bosniaks, similar to the harassment that led up to genocide. What is Bosnia doing to stop a future attack, which many people think is likely? Is the country ready to defend itself if necessary?
You mean attack by whom or against whom?
So attack, I assume, by the question, by the young Serbian generations against Bosniaks, leading again to the additional ethnic cleansing and who knows what.
Well, to tell you frankly, I don't believe in such an attack, yeah, but there are political attacks, and it is poisoning the atmosphere on a daily basis. Dodik again said 3 or 4 days ago for Australian Serb TV that they like to have their own state, etc. This is poisoning the atmosphere on a daily basis. And I must say that we as international community have done quite a few mistakes, but especially after 96, after Dayton, yeah, we thought that reconciliation will just happen. But speaking about the new candidate for High Representative, Mr. Schmidt, he is in the German-Israeli friendship group, he's in the German-Polish friendship group, and in the German-Czech friendship group. And all these groups are working for reconciliation. Also, what was happening after World War II, the biggest two enemies who had millions of dead people created a common agency for steel and coal, because from steel and coal you can create weapons, you know. They have founded European Union. They have established Erasmus program. In Erasmus program, we have had 600,000 young people already who went to other countries. They have established a common TV, and they have a youth exchange program, and they have also common government sessions. They have common history books. All this we have missed to do in the Balkans, to have common history books, because now you have history books from Croatia, or even if you have them from Banja Luka, it is one-sided, yeah. We don't have a common TV program in the Balkans, except maybe Al Jazeera, yeah, which is not bad, and N1 now. But we have between Germany and France, we have Arte program. Why don't we have Arte Balkans? Why don't we have Erasmus Balkans? Yeah, so that young people who went from Mostar to Barcelona, they should go first to Banja Luka and vice versa, or to Sarajevo, or to Belgrade, and then to Barcelona or Madrid, etc. We missed a lot here, and also 2 schools under one roof, etc. This will be very difficult to undo. However, if you go to ordinary people, if you go to Hodjas, if you go to priests, especially in central Bosnia, there's a lot of cooperation. But if you go to the political pyramid, you know, to the top level, there's less and less. They live of differences. So, but we must make a big effort for reconciliation. I think the broad population is ready, including the Serbs. But on the other side, if they have been indoctrinated, if they have got school books where the Bosniaks are the enemies, where the Bosniaks are aggressors, yeah, and they got it for last 25 years, then of course young people are one-sidedly informed and indoctrinated. So there's a lot of job to do for the future.
Another question is, in line with your answer, would it be good to form a citizens commission to support the law against genocide denial and even about unifying the country as a whole?
Absolutely, I would support this. It would be fantastic, you know, to have such citizens committees everywhere, even in small villages. Maybe you know that I'm of the Slovenian minority, And my father was in such a committee in South Carinthia, South Austria, and they went to, he was in the framework of the church. His colleague, who was German speaking, Mr. Waldstein, and my father went from village to village, from church to church, and they preached. My father, like a preacher, you know, about need of reconciliation. Yeah, and today we have again we have today municipal elections in my municipality, and we have also a small Slovenian party. It's called Volilna Skupnost, election community or whatever. And believe me, now German-speaking young Austrians are coming to us and they say, oh, hey guys, you have a jazz musician, you have a professor, and you have a singer on your list. Can we join you? Can we join you? So this is maybe the future. Also, it's a pity that after war, Mr. Ashdown didn't say every party must have among candidates also groups from the others. Say SDA would have some Croats or some Serbs on the list. The Serb parties would have some Croats or Bosniaks on the list, etc. Mixed list, you know. We missed a lot, yeah. But I think reconciliation is possible. And if you remember correctly, no revenge killings took place in Srebrenica or Bosnia and Herzegovina. After 100,000 people have been killed, which is terrible. It's really terrible. A single killing is terrible, but there was no revenge killing. This is remarkable. This means that reconciliation is possible.
There is another question. Is there a role for the Bosnian Herzegovinian diaspora in supporting the country of Bosnia and Herzegovina in helping to come to terms with its past?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially you Americans, you know, I mean, if you look at the Biden administration, there are so many African Americans in the administration now in leading positions. Yeah, there are Latinos. Yeah, then bisexual, etc. I don't know these groups all. Yeah, but everybody is now represented in Biden administration. So this would be a good example also for Bosnia and Herzegovina, that we are mixing both constituent people issue, because people have to be protected. It is good. Think of the Bosniaks in Republika Srpska, but also citizen elements, citizens, because at the moment Bosnia and Herzegovina is a country without citizens. You have only constituent people, and there are about 400,000. There are about 400,000 people who are not allowed to run for the state presidency. Only just because you are born on the wrong side. If you are born in Srebrenica and you are Bosniak, you cannot be a candidate for the state presidency. Or Mr. Svetozar Pudaric, who was a Serb from Sarajevo, he went to the European Court for Human Rights and he complained. Regretfully, he is rahmetli now, he has died already, but he won the case in Strasbourg in the European Court for Human Rights that also Serbs from Sarajevo should be allowed to run for the state presidency. These are 400,000 people, and of course all minorities like the Slovaks and Czechs, Ukrainians, Italians in Prnjavo, yeah. This has to be changed, that we have also citizens. Like in Romania, my last example, in Romania, the president of Romania is a double minority member. He is German, of German origin, Klaus Ioannis, and he is in an Orthodox country, he's a Protestant, but he's a citizen. So he could become president of Romania. Yeah, thank you.
Right. We have a question of Gordon Bacon asking, saying the following. Dodik persuaded the Republika Srpska government to annul the findings of the 2004 Republika Srpska Commission into the events in and around Srebrenica in July '95. Is anything being done to reinstate the 2004 findings? I represented the international community on that commission, and the recommendations were drafted by the Serb members of the commission and made without pressure from anyone.
Well, as far as I remember, there was in this commission one delegate from Africa, one from Australia. Dodik even found, I think, 2 Jewish members of the commission. But I don't really remember that this commission report was published. But in any case, even if it was published or it will be published, nothing can change the verdict of the ICTY in Hague. And in Hague, in one other court, International Criminal Court, the verdict was very explicit about the 6 war criminals who were Croats, but also about Karadzic, Plavšić, and most probably about Mladic. It was very explicit, and no commission can change these verdicts from Hague.
Right. Then there is another question. What have you done to ensure that ArcelorMittal and municipality Prijedor create a memorial in the concentration camp Omarska?
I'm ashamed to say that I didn't do enough, but I met the director of ArcelorMittal, and we went to this Bela Kuća White House in Prijedor, and I appealed to him to allow the establishment or this of a memorial plaque, in the White House. But of course, he has a general manager who is a Serb, and they actually didn't follow up on their promise.
Okay. Then there's a question. Why don't you encourage the European Union to impose sanctions to Serbia and Republika Srpska because of genocide denial and court decisions?
This is a good question. And actually, even a conclusion or law, if you like, even a conclusion exists that European Union can, if you like, punish such people who are denying genocide or who are undermining. The word undermining is not only violating, also undermining the Dayton Treaty. Such a conclusion, such a law exists. But I looked at it more careful. You need 55% of support in European Union. And there's another high representative apart from me, Mr. Borrell, the high representative for foreign policy of European Union. He can trigger such a punishment, if you like, He can trigger, and only he can trigger, not me. But I will be in touch with him in the next few weeks. A very good question, thank you.
Do you know if there is
actually the punishment? Maybe you will think it is very mild. There are only 2 possibilities. One is travel ban, but of course Croatia has 1,000 kilometers of common borders with Bosnia. So if there would be a travel ban to European Union, then people from Banja Luka could not travel to Europe. They would have to go via Serbia, or people from Herzegovina who would be under this ban could not even go to Dalmatia. Sorry. And of course, there would be an asset freeze also.
Do you know if there is any progress on classifying Chetniks as a terrorist organization? We saw Chetnik symbols in other terrorist attacks around the world.
Progress, yes. You know that I'm too long in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but there is, for the first time in my memory, 12 years, and I was also ambassador for 4 years. In 16 years, I see for the first time that these Chetnik and Raja Mihailovic, etc., movements and events are being under attack by the state prosecutor, and this is a good development.
Okay. Then one question that we want to ask you as a group and as your supporters is, what can we do to support your initiative for the law on genocide denial?
Okay, you have a really very significant role. You are a huge diaspora. You are several 100,000, and you can indeed appeal to the Congress and to American politicians. You can speak to your own politicians, whether it's Kentucky or somewhere else, South Carolina, Georgia, wherever you live, you can appeal to them. And I know that it is not like politicians in Bosnia or maybe in Austria, who don't react. I met this Mr. Vickers, He said that every single mail is being replied because these are voters. These are voters, and your system is more competitive than in Austria or in Bosnia because you have to win in your own state. You have to win over the opponent, It's not like that you get a lot of votes and countrywide or statewide and then you are being elected. You must win against your opponent. So every single vote is important. And you have seen it, how tight it was in Georgia and elsewhere. But you have a huge role to play. And I encourage you to play this role because I have good examples. For example, in Ireland, the diaspora, I think, is rather small. Bosniak diaspora is rather small. But they are very, very active. And all Irish politicians know exactly where Srebrenica is, what happened in Srebrenica. They're visiting Bosnia and Herzegovina. And when I asked for a meeting in Ireland in the past, I got it immediately. They're totally aware of the events and this role your associations can play. I must, however, also say a critical word to you. There were quite some associations, Bosniak associations in the United States, not your association, but they have written a letter to Blinken, I think a very rude letter about the new possible High Representative, Mr. Schmidt. I mean, how can you write to Mr. Blinken a letter against somebody whom you don't know? What do they know about Mr. Schmidt? Yeah, Mr. Schmidt is a very noble gentleman. He was 30 years in the Deutsche Bundestag, in the German parliament. He was 8 years State Secretary for Defense. He was 4 years Minister of Agriculture of Germany. Germany is the biggest state in the European Union. And how come some of your colleague associations have written a letter to Blinken against Mr. Schmidt? I'm a little bit lost, I'm sorry to say. It was not your association, absolutely. I checked, you know, but some of them have been against Mr. Schmidt without knowing him, Very strange, yeah. But otherwise, you can do a lot, absolutely. And on top of it, some of your colleagues, female colleagues, have made it. And I'm always quoting that we have 4 lady Bosniak ministers in Europe, and that there is not a single state in Europe, not a single state, only Bosnia and Herzegovina, who has given 4 leading politicians to Europe. There's Alma Zadic, of course, in Austria, Minister of Justice. She's from Tuzla. There was Aida Hadji Alic. She was 27 when she became Minister of Education of Sweden. And there's an assistant or councillor minister in Norway in the Ministry, I think, of Energy. And of course, we have Arminka Helic from Gračanica in the House of Lords in England. Yeah. And I think in some of your states, there are also candidates or even members of the legislature, etc. In any case, they have a huge influence. Believe me, these ladies, all are Bosniak, yeah. They have a huge influence, of course, like in Austria, Alma Zadic. She is one of the best ministers. She studied at Catholic University of Piacenza. She graduated from Columbia University. She graduated from Vienna University, and she worked for a huge international law company, which is operating in 17 states, you know. So Alma Zadic is one of the best ministers in Austria, and only 2 ladies have managed in Austria, or 2 politicians, to get a better and better every month, a better, how to say, assessment of trustworthiness, you know. This is a lady in Austrian parliament, and then Alma Zadic. All other politicians went down as far as trust question is concerned, but Alma Zadic went up as the only one from the Austrian government. Thank you very much.
And then as one of the last questions here, you already did mention something about the push for Christian Schmidt to be the new High Representative of Bosnia. Do you have any idea whether he is going to be selected? What is the timeline on your staying in Bosnia and Herzegovina? And can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I'll tell you a secret. Via Zoom. Okay, Djenita, I will stay several months in Bosnia and Herzegovina, maybe 5 months or so, maybe more, maybe less, yeah. And Mr. Schmidt is not yet confirmed, but he is an official candidate of Germany. He is a candidate of Angela Merkel. She made some telephone calls also to the American administration with Joseph Biden. But of course, there are other more important issues. We must face it, It's not Valentin Inzko and Mr. Schmidt who is an important issue. But, there is this question of the Nord Stream of gas pipeline from Russia to Germany, climate issues, health issues, and also issues for North Atlantic Treaty Organization, military issues, etc. But the strongest adversary so far is Russia, obviously. The new Russian ambassador in Bosnia and Herzegovina, to whomever he spoke, to myself, to the German ambassador, he always says, we are for closure of the office of the OHR. Also, the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, he was in Bosnia and Herzegovina on 15th of December. He was totally against extension. He used the word in Russian sort of ovekovechitia. He's against this, that this job would be an eternal job, eternal job. And he is also for closure. So we don't know yet what Russia will do at the end. And I think the ultimate and last confirmation of United States also is still coming. Some noises are positive, but of course, this is beyond my control. It's outside my control. I can only have a smooth transition with Mr. Schmidt, but I cannot influence whether Turkey will be in favor or Canada will be in favor or against, or Japan. All these countries are in the Peace Implementation Council. But of course, United States is most important. There's also United Kingdom, Germany, France, Italy, etc. Altogether, 12 states are in the Peace Implementation Council. And there this successor will be selected and confirmed. And only then it goes to the Security Council of United Nations. And there's a Bosnian word for aminovati. Aminovati, maybe in English, they get the final blessing. The High Representative is getting in the Security Council. But again, in the Security Council, the Russians are sitting. So this question is still open so far. And let's wait a few weeks and then we will know more.
And then, thank you for that. And then as a last question, I would like to ask you, it's a question from the audience. What do you consider to be the most significant progress or accomplishment that Bosnia has made during your appointment?
Well, to tell you frankly, I'm not satisfied with my performance. I'm pretty frustrated. But I must tell you that when I came to Bosnia and Herzegovina, the Peace Implementation Council gave me a paper with a so-called 5+2 agenda, which means that state property, military property has to be registered and that rule of law has to be established, fiscal stability and so on. But the second condition is very interesting out of 5+2. The second condition is interesting. Positive assessment of the situation in Bosnia and Herzegovina based on full compliance with Dayton. So when I came to Bosnia to close the office, I have seen I cannot give a positive assessment of the situation. Yeah, even today, very difficult. When some people like to destroy the state. When Dodik said last February, goodbye Bosnia, welcome RS exit. Yeah, he wanted to be funny with British exit, Brexit. So he said, goodbye Bosnia, welcome RS exit. Yeah. So if you have such a situation, then of course you can't close the office. And I know it is, I don't want to have the policy of FBI, FBI is always creating excuses, yeah. But one of other issue which was also significant is that in a way, the bond powers have been taken away. And Josip Juratovic, who is a member of the German parliament, Josip Juratovic, he's the only mechanic in the German parliament, a very, very fine, a very noble person. He said that the bomb powers have been taken away from me in the very beginning and that I was a paper tiger. Yeah, this is all what I can tell you, that I'm not satisfied, but international community, some of the countries are satisfied because I didn't use bomb powers. If I go on the street in Sarajevo or elsewhere, people are dissatisfied. Why didn't you kick out this politician, the other politician, etc.? Yeah? We must also be aware of the following. The first phase of Bosnia and Herzegovina of international community was very robust, very strong. We created a flag, border police, we created license plates, a national anthem, 6 ministries, and this was a good period. The second period, actually the last 12 period, the international community has declared as period of local ownership, period of local solutions, period of local accountability, local ownership. And you can imagine that it was not very glorious. It was not very successful. No new institutions were created. And actually even existing institutions were eroded and weakened, like the Constitutional Court. Yeah. By the way, Constitutional Court, I am proud that we succeeded to maintain the European judges in the Constitutional Court. You can imagine if there would be no 3 international judges in the Constitutional Court, then the Constitutional Court would be simply a normal, ordinary house of people. And then the Serbs and the Croats would vote together against the Bosniak judges. Or if it was a federation issue, the Croats and Bosniaks would vote together against Republika Srpska judges, etc. So I am very proud that we have now a German professor as a judge in the Constitutional Court. We have a Swiss professor in the Constitutional Court, and the third one is from Romania. So this is what we succeeded. We also, I mean, it is strange to say my success is that you have prevented something. But indeed, I have prevented quite a lot, like referendum on independence, referendum about state judiciary, etc. And yeah, I also succeeded, of course, in my 2024 reports to the Security Council to keep the interest for Bosnia and Herzegovina alive. Because, there are bigger conflicts in Bosnia. Take Afghanistan, take Middle East, so Libya. And also, there are more recent conflicts. These more recent conflicts are more sexy, I'm sorry, yeah? And there are more, some are bigger even, like take Myanmar, Burma, yeah, and many other conflicts. So people are now about to forget Bosnia and Herzegovina. So one of my successes and achievement was to keep interest alive for Bosnia and Herzegovina for better times, yeah? Now, Angela Merkel has said why she is proposing a candidate from Germany. She said she likes to bring Bosnia and Herzegovina back to the international agenda. This is exactly what I want to have for the last 10 years, to bring Bosnia and Herzegovina back to the agenda. I was 12 times in Germany. I was about 5 times in German parliament. I was 4 times in the cabinet of Angela Merkel. And once I even met her briefly, very briefly, but always with the same purpose, to bring Bosnia and Herzegovina back to the international agenda. And I give you a good example, which you wouldn't believe. I told the Germans, it's my favorite question, how many soldiers from Germany are in Bosnia? Do you know? You don't know? You don't need to know. And the Germans didn't know. There is not a single German soldier in Bosnia. My second question was, how many soldiers are from Chile in Bosnia? They didn't know, of course, yeah, but there are 20. So how can we have 20 soldiers from Chile, peacekeepers, yeah, in Bosnia and Herzegovina? Of course, we have also Austrian and Turks and Slovaks and Slovenians and so on, Irish, yeah. But we have 20 from Chile, but not a single German. So I said, hello, please do something. It's your responsibility. And ultimately, our security, I'm from Austria, our security, security of Bavaria, security of Germany starts in the Balkans. Weapons trafficking, drugs trafficking, human trafficking, crime comes from Balkans to our places. So Germany also is interested to have rule of law in Bosnia and Herzegovina, to have good governance, and it seems now they are interested to do something. So I'm very happy.
Well, we will end on that note, I guess. Thank you very much, Ambassador Inzko, for everything you have done, and especially for your time this morning and this afternoon for this program. I would also like to thank everybody who has submitted their questions. We could not get to all of them, obviously, but some of them were very good, and we're glad.
I will come again.
Oh, wonderful. We will have another program. Thank you very much, and have a good afternoon.
Goodbye to United States, to all of you. You are such a proud community. You wouldn't believe we have elections today in my municipality here, yeah. And we have also one, Muhammad Bayric, you know. This is, of course, a little bit was it calculation, because Muhammad Bayric has 40 relatives in the Obstina, yeah. And we have 14 additional votes, yeah, 40. But he's such a wonderful young guy. He studied medical technology, and he is now one of the leading engineers in our hospital here, Klinischke Center in Klagenfurt, yeah. And you cannot build a house anymore in Austria, anywhere, also here in the south of Austria, without having 2 or 3 Bosniak companies, like construction company, then heating installation, electrical installations, yeah. It's unbelievable. And there are some companies, one is number 4 in Europe, Strabag, yeah. And regional Strabag in my region, it has 90% workers from Bosnia. But these are not just workers, they are in leading positions, you know, in leading positions. And I just wish, you know, I really just wish that we would kickstart the economy in Bosnia and Herzegovina, that we would use a shock therapy to have quick progress in Bosnia and Herzegovina, because such wonderful people, such capable people simply exist. But let's give them a chance at home. Yeah.
Absolutely, we agree with that. So now with that, back to Vehida.
Thank you. On behalf of Congress of Bosniaks of North America, I would just like to thank everyone once again for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed this program. I especially want to thank His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Valentin Inzko for taking this time to be with us today. And I would also like to thank our co-sponsor today, Working Group for Bosnia and Herzegovina. And special thanks to Dr. David Pettigrew, Djenita Pasic, Murat Muratovic, Akif Chogo, and Patrick McCarthy for helping us realize this program today. For more information about the Lily Academy upcoming events, please visit our event section of our website, www.bosniak.org. You can also subscribe to our newsletter to receive notifications. And you can also visit our Facebook page, Congress of Bosniaks of North America. Thank you again for joining us, and see you next time.